The rain hit the window hard. I froze when I heard my name whispered across the crowded cafe. It was not a voice I had heard in years, but it pulled me back instantly. I turned slowly, heart thumping, and there he was, standing by the door, looking almost the same, yet somehow different. Older, calmer, but that same quiet intensity in his eyes. I didn't expect to see him here. Not after all this time. Not after everything that had happened. My stomach knotted as memories rushed in uninvited. I wanted to look away, pretend I hadn't noticed, but my legs refused to move. I stayed frozen, watching him. He smiled faintly, like he had been waiting for this moment too. I remembered the last time we had spoken. It had ended badly. Harsh words, misunderstandings, and then silence that stretched for years. And now he was here, in the same small town, in the same little cafe where we had once shared so much. I tried to calm my racing thoughts. Maybe it was just coincidence. Maybe he didn't even remember me. I gripped my coffee cup tightly, the warmth doing little to soothe the chill running through me. He walked closer, and my breath caught. He hadn't noticed me yet. I wanted to say something, anything, but the words got stuck halfway. I stayed silent. My mind argued with itself. Should I leave? Should I speak? Part of me wanted to run, but another part, the part that had never stopped caring, wanted to stay. He glanced around and finally our eyes met. Recognition flickered across his face, quickly replaced by that calm mask he always wore. I didn't think I would see you here, he said. His voice was quiet, but it carried a weight that made the cafe noise fade around us. I swallowed hard. I could say the same, I managed to whisper. There was a pause. We stood like that for a moment, the world shrinking to just the two of us. I wanted to ask why he was here, how he had found me, but something stopped me. The silence between us felt heavier than words. Then he did something I did not expect. He held out an envelope. My name was written neatly on the front, in handwriting I knew well. My fingers shook as I took it, the paper thin and yet filled with a weight I could already feel. You don't have to open it now, he said softly. But you should read it. I stared at him, confused and afraid. I had no idea what could be inside. A letter from him meant closure or chaos, or maybe both. I had spent years pretending I didn't care, that I had moved on. But here it was, evidence that the past had not forgotten me. The cafe felt smaller suddenly, crowded faces blurring. I wanted to ask him why, but the words refused to come. I stayed quiet, gripping the envelope as if it were a lifeline. Then, as he turned to leave, he paused and looked back over his shoulder. There are things you need to know, he said. Things I should have told you a long time ago. My heart lurched. I wanted to call after him, but my voice was gone. I opened the envelope, my hands trembling, and pulled out a single sheet of paper. The words made my chest tighten, and my mind spin. It was a secret I had never imagined. Something that could change everything I thought I knew about him, about us. The first line alone was enough to make me question years of silence. Every decision I had made. I looked up, but he was already gone. The bell above the door ringing softly, as if marking the end of one chapter and the start of another. I gripped the letter tighter. My eyes scanned the words again, and my heart skipped. He hadn't just come back into my life. He had left me a secret that would change everything. The cafe noise returned, but I didn't hear it. I didn't notice the rain outside. I didn't move. My mind was racing with one thought. How could he have kept this from me for so long? And what would happen now that I knew the truth? I stayed frozen in place, the envelope clutched to my chest, as the first hint of a storm inside me began to grow. I couldn't stop thinking about the letter. My fingers traced the paper as if the words themselves could speak to me. And then the memories came, uninvited and sharp, like fragments of a life I had almost forgotten. I first met him in the small library downtown. I had been searching for a book on photography, my fingers brushing against the spines when he appeared beside me. He reached for the same book and our hands touched. I pulled back, startled, but he just laughed softly. "Sorry," he said. "I didn't mean to startle you." I shook my head, smiling despite myself. "It's fine. You were faster." That was the first spark, small and unnoticed, but it grew quickly. We met again at the park, under the oak tree where kids played and dogs ran freely. He was sketching in a notebook, lines and shapes capturing the world in ways I couldn't yet understand. "You have a way of seeing things differently," I told him, watching the pencil move across the page. He looked up and smiled. That quiet smile that seemed to make everything feel lighter. Maybe I just notice what others miss. We spent hours together, talking about everything and nothing. Music, movies, dreams we were too afraid to admit out loud. There was laughter, gentle teasing, and long silences that didn't feel uncomfortable. He made me feel safe, even when the world outside was loud and chaotic. Then came the misunderstanding. I had overheard him talking to someone on the phone. The words were fragments, distorted by distance and my imagination. I convinced myself he was leaving town, that he didn't care, that all our moments had meant nothing. I didn't ask him. I didn't clarify. I stayed silent, thinking it was safer to walk away than to face rejection or heartbreak. And so, I left. I moved to another city, threw myself into work, into routine, into forgetting. I stayed silent, and I let the years pass. He didn't reach out. I told myself that was proof I had been right. That was how I remembered it. Until now. Reading the letter, I realized I had been wrong. The first paragraph alone cleared the fog of memory. He hadn't been leaving. He had been waiting. Waiting for me to speak. For me to notice the miscommunication. For me to understand. My silence had been the barrier, not his absence. The memories returned, sharper this time. I saw his face as he ran to catch a bus we had almost missed. The way he held his jacket around me when it rained unexpectedly. The late-night walks where we talked about nothing but felt like everything. I had shut it all out. I had convinced myself that distance and time had broken what we had, when in reality it had been my own fear, my own silence. I flipped the letter again and found a folded photograph tucked inside. It was of the two of us, taken that day in the park under the oak tree. We were laughing, hair blown by the wind, completely unguarded. I hadn't remembered him taking it, or maybe I had but had buried it deep to protect myself. I held it close and felt a pang of regret. How many moments had we lost because of words we never spoke? How many years had I carried a misunderstanding that could have been cleared in minutes? A sound from outside the window brought me back. The rain had stopped, and sunlight spilled across the table. I noticed a small scribble at the bottom of the letter. It wasn't part of the main message. It was a single line. "I never stopped thinking about you. My heart skipped." I realized then that everything I had believed about the past was only half the story. The truth had been there all along, waiting for me to see it. I looked up from the letter and out the window. A figure walked down the street, hesitant but familiar. My breath caught. Could it be him, coming back to finally speak the words he had waited years to say? Or was this just another trick of my imagination? Another fragment of the past I was desperate to hold on to. The photograph slipped from my hands, landing on the floor. I bent down to pick it up, and my eyes fell on a folded note I hadn't seen before. It wasn't from him directly. It was addressed to me in handwriting that I recognized instantly. I opened it slowly. and the words inside made my heart pound. There was a truth there I had never guessed, something that explained why he had left and why he had returned now. It changed everything I thought I knew about that summer, about us, about why we had been apart. I sat frozen, the letter in one hand, the photograph in the other, and the small note between them. The past had been rewritten, quietly, in fragments that only now made sense. And for the first time in years, I realized that the story we had started was not over, that the note ended with a single sentence that made my stomach twist. It wasn't just about the past. It was about something that was about to happen. Something that would force me to decide if I was ready to face him, and face the truth we had both avoided for so long. I looked up again, heart racing, and the world outside felt both familiar and entirely new. I had stayed silent for years, but the past was catching up with me, and the truth was no longer waiting politely in a letter. It was coming alive, and I was going to have to confront it. The cafe door opened and my heart jumped. He was there, standing in the doorway, scanning the room as if searching for me. I had read his letters, held his photograph, imagined this moment countless times. But now that it was real, I froze. He spotted me instantly. His eyes widened for a moment, and then that familiar calm settled over his face. He walked over slowly, each step deliberate, carrying the same quiet intensity I remembered from years ago. "I wasn't sure you'd be here," he said softly, stopping across from me. I didn't know if you would come back," I admitted, my voice trembling despite my effort to stay steady. He smiled, the kind of smile that made everything feel lighter and heavier at the same time. "I never stopped hoping," he said. I swallowed hard. The words were simple, yet they carried the weight of all the years we had lost. I wanted to say so much more, to tell him how much I had missed him, how much I had thought about him, but my throat felt tight. He pulled out the chair across from me and sat down. There was a pause, full of unspoken memories, the silence stretching between us. I could feel it all, the longing, the regret, the connection that had never fully broken. "Do you remember the park?" he asked, his voice low, almost hesitant. I nodded. "Under the oak tree. The day it rained suddenly, and you shared your jacket with me." He laughed softly, and it was like sunlight breaking through clouds. "I thought you were going to run into the street and ruin your shoes." I smiled despite myself. "You've always remembered the little things." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small notebook. "I kept a record of the moments I didn't want to forget," he said, opening it carefully. Inside were sketches of places, of objects, even of me from memory. The lines captured details I hadn't realized he noticed. The curl of my hair in the wind, the tilt of my head when I laughed. I looked up at him, and my chest tightened. "I can't believe you kept all this. I wanted you to know," he said softly. "Even when we were apart, I remembered. I never forgot. I wanted to reach for his hand, to bridge the distance between us, but I stayed still. Years of silence had made me cautious. I wanted to trust, but I was afraid. Why didn't you try to find me sooner?" I asked, the question slipping out before I could stop it. He hesitated, his eyes dropping for a moment. "I didn't want to push. I thought, maybe you had moved on. Maybe you didn't want to see me." I shook my head slowly. I stayed silent too. "I thought you had left, and I didn't want to admit I still cared." Our hands hovered over the table, close but not touching. The air was charged with everything we had left unsaid. The past felt alive, pressing down on us, forcing a confrontation we had avoided for years. "I kept hoping one day we'd meet like this," he admitted, voice quiet. "I needed to see you and know that the connection we had wasn't gone." I looked at him, and for the first time in years, I let myself believe it could be real. I never stopped caring, I said. He leaned forward slightly, his eyes searching mine. Then why did we let so much time pass? I didn't answer immediately. The words I wanted to say felt heavy, loaded with fear and longing. Because I was scared, I whispered finally. Scared I would ruin what we had if I spoke too soon. He nodded, understanding in his gaze. I was scared too. I thought I had lost you forever. The moment stretched between us, fragile and electric. I realized then that this was more than reunion. It was a choice. A decision waiting to be made. Would we let fear and silence control us again? Or would we finally let the truth guide us? He reached toward the envelope I had been holding, the one that had brought us back together. You read it? He asked quietly. Yes, I said, my hands clutching it. And it changed everything. He nodded, and for the first time, a flicker of relief passed over his face. I wanted you to know everything, he said. Not just my thoughts, but why I stayed away, why I waited. I opened my mouth to ask more, but the words caught in my throat. The letter had hinted at something else, a secret he had carried all this time. Something I hadn't yet understood. My eyes flicked up to him, searching, needing, hoping he would tell me now. He seemed to sense it, his gaze steady and calm. There's one more thing, he said. Something that might change how you see everything that happened between us. My heart jumped. I leaned forward instinctively, desperate for clarity, for truth. What is it? I asked, voice barely audible. He paused, looking down at the table, then back at me. It's about why we were really apart. It's something I never told anyone before. Not even you. I felt a rush of anticipation and fear. Everything we had shared, all the memories, the longing, the silence, it was about to shift. The next moment would decide everything. And then he spoke the first hint of the truth. A single line that made my chest tighten. A revelation I had never imagined. He took a deep breath, and I could see the weight in his eyes. I need to tell you the real reason we were apart, he said quietly. His voice was calm, steady, but it carried the gravity of years of silence. I leaned forward, my hands gripping the edge of the table. I had waited for this moment, imagined it, feared it, and now it was here. I'm listening, I whispered. He looked down, then back at me. It wasn't that I stopped caring. It wasn't that I wanted to leave. I stayed away because I thought I was protecting you. I blinked, confused. Protecting me? From what? From me, he said simply. From my mistakes, from my failures. I thought if I stayed away, you could have a life without the burden of my mess. I didn't want to drag you into the chaos I was living through at the time. The words hit me like a sudden wave. I remembered. The time I had overheard him on the phone, assumed he was leaving me behind. The anger, the hurt, the choice I had made to walk away. It had all been built on assumptions, on silence. You mean, all those years you didn't want to hurt me, I said, voice barely audible. You were staying away because of me, not because of anything else. He nodded. Exactly. I thought silence would be safer than honesty. I thought you deserved a life free from my problems. I never realized how much my absence would hurt you. I felt a rush of emotions, anger, relief, sadness, and longing, all tangled together. And I stayed silent too, I admitted. I assumed you didn't care, that you had forgotten me. I let fear decide for me. I let silence grow between us instead of asking questions. He reached across the table, his hand brushing mine. The contact was small, gentle, but it carried a lifetime of emotion. We both let silence rule us, he said. We both let misunderstandings decide our story. I looked into his eyes and saw the truth there. No excuses, no blame, only honesty. And in that honesty, I realized how much I had missed him. How much I had carried this gap in my heart without knowing it. I can't believe how long we wasted, I whispered. How much time we lost. He nodded, a small, sad smile on his face. I know. I think about it every day. About how things could have been different if I had spoken sooner. If I had been brave enough to tell you the truth. I swallowed, the lump in my throat making it hard to speak. And now? I asked quietly. What happens now? He took a deep breath and let it out slowly. Now, we decide. We can let this moment pass. Let the past keep controlling us. Or we can finally be honest. Finally take a step forward together. But that means leaving the fear behind. I felt my heart tighten. I wanted to say yes, to take that step. But the years of silence had left scars I wasn't sure had healed. It's not that simple, I said, my voice shaking. I'm scared. I've been hurt by assumptions, by absence. How do I know this time will be different? He smiled softly. And it was not the same calm mask from before. This was real, honest, vulnerable. I can't promise it will be easy. I can't promise there won't be challenges. But I can promise that I will be honest. That I will stay. That I will not let silence come between us again. I took a deep breath and nodded slowly. The fear was still there, but so was the hope. I realized then that the truth, though painful, had opened a door we had both avoided. Then he did something unexpected. He leaned closer, lowering his voice to a whisper. There's one more thing. Something I haven't told anyone. Something that could change how you see everything, even now. I froze. My heart skipped. The letters, the photographs, the explanations, they had cleared so much. But now there was still a hidden piece of the puzzle. What is it? I asked, my hands trembling slightly. He looked me in the eye, and for the first time, I saw hesitation. It's about why I left that summer. It's about something I couldn't explain before, something I only realized later. I felt a chill. The anticipation was almost unbearable. Every assumption I had made, every regret, every longing, it was all about to shift again. And you're going to tell me now? I asked, voice barely audible. He nodded slowly. Yes, but you need to be ready for the truth. It's not what you expect, and it changes everything. I swallowed hard, the room seeming smaller, the air thicker. The rain outside had stopped, but the storm inside me was only beginning. I realized then that this truth would not just reopen old wounds. It could redefine our entire story, for better or worse. And the choice was no longer just about understanding the past. It was about deciding if we were ready to face the future together. My hands gripped the table. My breath caught. I looked at him and waited for the words that could change everything. He took a deep breath and finally spoke, the words I had waited years to hear. I left that summer because I thought I was holding you back, he said. I was in a place I didn't want to drag you into. I thought you deserved better than the mistakes I was making. I never stopped caring, never stopped hoping you would understand someday. I felt a wave of relief and warmth wash over me. Years of doubt, silence, and misunderstanding suddenly made sense. The anger I had held onto melted into something softer. I was wrong too, I admitted quietly. I thought you didn't care. I let fear keep me from speaking, from trusting you. We both let silence decide for us. He reached across the table and took my hand in his. The simple touch carried the weight of all the lost time. The words unsaid. The longing we had both carried. I felt my chest swell with emotion I had buried for years. Then maybe we can start again, he said, eyes steady and hopeful. No assumptions, no silence. Just honesty from now on. I nodded, a small smile breaking across my face. I'd like that. I want that. The cafe around us faded, the noise dimming into the background. It was just the two of us, sitting across from each other, connected by everything we had endured and everything we were about to share. It felt fragile and strong all at once, like stepping onto a bridge that had been rebuilt from years of careful patience. We talked for hours, sharing memories, laughing at old misunderstandings, and discovering the details we had missed in each other's lives. Every word felt like a step toward healing, every glance like a promise that the past would no longer define us. Outside, the sun broke through the clouds, casting golden light into the cafe. I watched him watch me, the same quiet intensity in his eyes, but now softened by understanding and presence. I realized how much we had both grown, how much the silence had shaped us, and yet how ready we were to let it go. As we stood to leave, he handed me a folded piece of paper. I recognized the handwriting instantly, the familiar curves of letters I had once memorized. "It's for you," he said softly. "Something I wrote a long time ago when I was still figuring things out." I unfolded it carefully and read the lines. It was a short letter, almost like a note, telling me how he had felt the first time we met, how he had admired me quietly, and how he had hoped our paths would cross again. The final line made my heart swell. "No matter the distance or silence, my thoughts always find you." I looked up at him, tears welling in my eyes. "You never stopped caring," I whispered. He shook his head, a gentle smile on his face. "And I never will." We stepped outside together, the sun warm on our faces, the streets bustling with life. But our world had narrowed to just us. We walked slowly, hands brushing, shoulders nearly touching, savoring the simple closeness we had both longed for. For the first time in years, the past felt like a distant echo rather than a burden. Forgiveness had flowed silently between us, unspoken but understood. The mistakes, the misunderstandings, the years of separation, they no longer had power over us. We stopped at the park under the oak tree, where it all had begun. Leaves danced in the breeze, and the world seemed still. I felt him take my hand, this time firmly, without hesitation. "Ready to leave the past behind?" he asked, his voice low and steady. I nodded, a soft smile tugging at my lips. "I think we've earned this." He pulled me close, just enough to feel the warmth of each other, and we stayed like that for a long moment. The quiet around us felt like a witness, a silent blessing on everything we had found again. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small envelope. "One last thing," he said. "I kept this for years, waiting for the right time to give it to you." I opened it to find a pressed leaf, perfectly preserved, from the day we first met in the park. Beneath it was a short note. "For every moment we were apart, this will remind you that I never forgot you." I looked up and he smiled. The sunlight caught his eyes, and I realized that no matter how much time had passed, some connections never fade. We walked away from the oak tree together, side by side, feeling the lightness of a story finally whole. Every step felt certain, every glance shared, a promise kept. And as we disappeared into the busy streets, I whispered to myself, feeling the warmth of the moment deep inside me. No silence can hold a heart that refuses to forget.